10 minutes later, the phone rang again. And this is sort of the penny drop because it was a teacher from the same school who was also calling me to see if I could work. And they were all just working down a list of casual teachers in order to give schools a heads up that a teacher might already be working, they might already be booked, and just to massively reduce what we estimated was conservatively about 4 million wasted phone calls a year taking place in Australia. I'm never one to shy away from the fact that good timing and good luck plays a part in achieving traction and success.
Welcome to the DevReady podcast, where we're helping non-techs build great tech. Today, a founder's journey, and bringing Ben on board from ClassCover, the founder, a big journey around taking a concept that he discovered when he was coaching from a tennis perspective into professional coaching in that space. Since he learnt about education and the issues around getting access to resources or teachers, and we're on the journey of building a bit of tech. Today we'll talk about that, some of the learnings from that, and really unpack what Ben's learnt over the journey. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Absolute pleasure, Andrew. Good to be here.
Let's go back. Let's tell people, who is Ben, and how did you really get to the point of ClassCover and how it all began?
Yeah, look, have a pretty diverse history. All started out like hit a lot of tennis balls as a kid, and stumbled into a bit of part-time tennis coaching work that turned into 10 years of being a tennis professional in Sydney in the UK, and so that was a really fun part of my life. Yeah, it was a really good time of my life, and think back on it very fondly. And then adjacent to that, had a teaching qualification. Have basically spent my entire life in education, whether it be as a student, as an educator of some description, whether it be in the tennis or in the classroom.
Sports teacher, I imagine, or no?
Funnily enough, I'm not. Would you believe? And it was
There you go. I thought that'd be a perfect spot for you.
it was a piece of advice that that actually a teacher of mine gave me, and they said, "Look, you're a tennis coach. Yeah, you're a tennis pro. You're not going to get any trouble. You're not going to have any trouble picking up PE or sport teaching work. So why don't you do something that's classroom?" Because the sports coaching, the PE teaching can be pretty hard on the body and the voice. And so I went off and did. I was a politics major at uni, and went off and did a teaching degree in history and legal studies. So spent a bit of time in the classroom. I actually spent a lot of time in a primary school setting. Again, that was just sort of serendipitous. I just followed the opportunities. And then in about 2011, I was actually getting out of the surf at Curl Beach in Sydney. It was pouring with rain, and the phone rang, and it was a teacher from the school where my daughter went to primary school, actually, in the end. And she said, "Can you come and work?" And I said, "Yeah, see you in 25 minutes, no worries," going as a casual teacher. Then about 10 minutes later, a teacher from the same school called me and said, "Can you come and teach today?" And I said, "Well, I'm already teaching for Tony." And so, all right, no worries.
I see, just they got the black book out. So who do I call? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And then 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. And this is sort of the penny drop because it was a teacher from the same school who was also calling me to see if I could work. And they were all just working down a list of casual teachers. And I just thought, if this is happening with one person at one school, this school might be looking to book 12 different teachers on the day. If there's 9,800 schools across Australia, how many wasted phone calls are taking place to teachers who can't work? And that was the genesis for the idea.
Yeah, no, it's interesting how and I'll talk about how we began the podcast. 5 founders in a space of a week or two, they came to us and they all just blew, I think, about $1 million in product and had nothing to show for it. So you just come up with a concept from that, not because, but anything. So it's interesting how it all comes together sometimes, and something clicks, and I go, "Oh, this could be an angle," or "How do we help?" or "How do we give back?" or "How do we make a difference?" It's so when you went on that journey and you thought, "Okay, there's a problem here." What was the next step for you? What was the thinking? This is early tech, really. So you've been around this for a while. 15 years is early technology at the time. What was the first thinking?
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because there's both positives and negatives to the time in which we started, right? It's amazing now how a startup yes, we've got things like AI driven development, but at the same time, if you're working with any sort of security or compliance or government, then the security and the compliance overhead is absolutely massive to even get to the start line for a startup, which wasn't the case for us. We basically spun up a platform.
Would have been a lot easier back then, yeah.
It was. It was a lot easier. So in many ways harder, in some ways easier. But yeah, look, there was a couple of proof points. And the first was that conversation when the day I got out of the surf in the middle of winter, and which is peak casual teacher time. So the use case was at its most acute. I then saw a mate of mine who was a deputy principal put a Facebook status up, as people used to do in 2011, saying 22 calls to find two teachers, great way to spend a Sunday. So that was sort of part three. And I say this now, having worked with a lot of startups to help validate products. So we undervalidated the product massively. We were so much on hunch and so much on gut
Just building, yeah.
feel and what have you, and so then the next step was that there was a platform in use today, which is still in use, but just the UX of it looks very different, called whatif.com. And whatif.com was effectively an availability matrix, with dates across the top and hotel names down the vertical column, and availability, telling you in sort of a heat map format, last minute hotels and their prices that you could literally click to book. And so I completely plagiarized that in a mock-up, a very poor. I'm not only not technical, I'm not a designer. It was a very poor mock-up, and said, look, why don't we put teachers down the left-hand column, dates across the top, and they can inform availability, in order to give schools a heads up that a teacher might already be working, they might already be booked, and just to massively reduce what we estimated was conservatively about 4 million wasted phone calls a year taking place in Australia.
It's a lot of numbers, isn't it? Conservatively, yeah. It's huge.
Yeah, it really is, and especially when these are time and resource starved educators as well, who are doing this as sort of a bit of a side gig, bit of admin in amongst all the other, the ongoing tasks to keep a school running. Yeah, so look, that was the genesis. Then I had a co-founder at the state at that point. We sort of put our heads together around budget and time and capacity, and this is an important consideration for startups, is in that the idea came at the right time. And by that I mean I was casually teaching. My co-founder, had a job that afforded a little bit of flexibility. If your good idea comes and you've got a mortgage, two young children, a 60-hour-a-week job, then the execution becomes a lot more difficult. And so, I'm never one to shy away from the fact that good timing and good luck plays a part in achieving traction and success. And so at that stage, the timing worked, and there was enough money in the bank to engage an offshore developer. Again, I never shy away from the good luck stories, and we'd been doing a bit of graphic design work with a gentleman who had good knowledge, good domain knowledge about offshore resources, which again was very much in its infancy in 2011.
Yeah, you're very early in the pie, yeah. It was risky to jump over there at that point. It still is, but yeah, but you can find a path to good resources if you're really willing to look, and you got to look. You got to take your time. But yeah, it's all about who we know. Sometimes it's not about what we know.
Yeah, absolutely. And
The connections come from network, and if you get the right network, you're halfway there. That's generally helps.
yeah, absolutely. And look, I reckon, yeah, again, there's certain forks in the road in the life of any business, and I think if we hadn't met Andre, it was and he just had his business turned upside down by the earthquake in Christchurch, funnily enough, and he was sort of trying new things and what have you, and he helped us engage a software developer out of Romania. Now, without that serendipity, I reckon we would have had a high chance of getting a cowboy who would have had a high chance of building a really crap product. But what ended up happening is that we engaged this guy, Alex. He was with us for 2.5 years, ended up becoming full time, and he ended up getting poached by Amazon and relocating to the UK. So when
Oh, so you found a really good resource. Yeah.
Yeah, we really did, and like I said, it was all sort of little forks in the road where we're not necessarily through good luck, sorry, through good management, but through good luck. We knew a person at the right time. Um, I think there's a huge. I'm a big one about admitting what I don't know and being vulnerable in those settings and saying, look, this isn't what I'm experienced at. I need help, and going to try and find the experts and the knowledge.
That is one of the bigger challenges in any tech space when you're building a tech product as a non-technical founder, which you were. It's how do we get the right resources to enable it, and get it right the first time. There's many stories you can go on this podcast of the people that haven't found. So it is sometimes a bit of luck in the component, but it's also, I think, comes to the personable side too, because yeah, sometimes it's just the way you present and how you communicate and how you prep for the developer too. It can make life a bit easier. Sometimes it's just putting the detail in and you've done some thought through, which makes it easier to put it all together. I think a lot of people get lost with. Sometimes they blame the developer, but the reality is none of the thought's been done, and the developer's not capable of delivering that for them. So it becomes a who's responsible for what thing. So there's a lot around that in terms of, in the end, you're going to build something good. You got to think through the detail. You got to put some structure around it, and it sounds like you're doing that, which is always going to help get a better outcome. That's for sure.
Yeah, look, mate, I reckon one of the massive gaps in early stage businesses is in and around that product management. And it's that delegation, that misplaced delegation of key aspects of building a product that get handed over to software developers, and whether it be not imparting enough of the vision, the developers not having enough of a read on the goals and the problems that the product's trying to solve, um, and again, I've had this conversation many times with founders, and I'm like, well, you are the product owner. Like you need to prioritize. You need to have the vision. You can't just say, I need this, and then expect them to fill in all those gaps about how that need is going to be fulfilled, in respect of a software offering. So yeah, that's a huge misperception, and that's magnified 20-fold if you engage offshore resources. That organization of thoughts and prioritization of features and just sort of overall vision for a product. Yeah, way too much of that gets delegated out to the developers, in my opinion.
I agree, and that's why I think success comes to people. Yeah, I could sense that that's where you were going with it all, and I don't think it would have been as clean if you just handed it over either. That's the reality. Um,
And look, we made those mistakes for sure.
yeah, you learn as of the time, right? What are the gaps? Yeah,
Exactly. 15 years down the track, but yeah, try to help others not make those mistakes now, like I said did before we got on the camera. But yeah, I completely agree with you there.
yeah. It all starts with simple workflow. I think, like anything, even to take tech aside, if you're going to run a business or a process, we need to understand it and unpack it to be able to deliver on it. So we need steps. We need understanding what happens after this to this, and I think a lot of founders, when I've been speaking around technology, they really don't get that you need to understand all data, all angles. What might happen if this occurs? If a user does X, Y, Z, where do they go? What flows? So you really have to unpack it and slow down to speed up. In my mind, I always put that saying out there because slowing down is planning. It's the thought. It's the feedback. It's the strategy. It is the direction of how you're delivering an outcome, and you can loop that for a long time, and you can get it wrong, and then you revisit it. And sometimes you can build too big, and then you got to condense the flows to get them to a seamless flow all the way through. So there's a lot that goes on in that world, and if you can't own it as a founder, as the domain expert, which is generally what a good non-tech founder is, if they're not a domain expert, I find that really difficult. Then they're trying to make something up or not willing to dive into the domain. You're never gonna. I feel like you're never gonna succeed if you just hand it over. and say we just need to solve this. Yeah,
Yeah, I would agree with that, and it's it's interesting when you talk about the um, all those different components and making sure you're across all the different implications and potential impacts. A lot of people would call a product manager a mini CEO because they're literally having to juggle all the different requests of all different stakeholders, and that includes the founder who just wants everything done yesterday, or has the crazy dream and or has the crazy feature idea, all the way through to the enterprise customer, to the customer support team, the sales team, and crafting that high impact, high ROI, sort of lowest possible time and money cost roadmap is a complete art form. And it also takes a strength of character where you have to be ready to tell your CEO, no, you can't have that, or tell your enterprise customer, you're gonna have to wait for it. Um, so it's such a crucial aspect to building out a good platform, good product.
and I have these conversations with some of our work. We support a couple of startup founders and bits and pieces around that, and the shiny object features come up a lot. And okay, what would you like me to take out? This, or how do we prioritize it? So you have to push back, and I think that's a responsibility from whoever comes in that product owner seat. And if you're a founder, you need to really be making good snap decisions. And I would say it's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle more too, because it's not as clear cut as speak to a stakeholder and solve the problem. Sometimes connecting multiple things from multiple stakeholders to get to an outcome. And that's where the art form comes from. It's how do you really pull it together from a connection to ensure we deliver outcome across all stakeholders without over engineering or complicating the system too, because there's a lot of that needs to be considered.
Yeah, totally agree.
So when you were back at the day, you started this development journey, um, went over to offshore developer Romania. Uh, what was that like? First steps? Was it really just let's build something quickly? What was the first product iteration? How did you start piloting? Let's start with that early stage journey.
So again, it was probably a fair bit of good, not so much good luck versus good management, but it's on reflection. There's forks in the road, right? And I'm sure you've seen this many times, and that is to say that. This probably would boggle most of your listeners' minds, but back in 2011, we allocated 40 grand, right, for the version one, and to get it out for some marketing and sales. Now, we spent about 20% of that on the version one, and then we had the remainder for sales and marketing.
Which is a very good outcome if you can deliver that. Tell me how that went. Yeah.
Yeah. So and it wasn't that we created something spectacular with whatever it was, $8,000, give or take. It was that we had something incredibly light but functional to get out to our early schools and to get that feedback loop happening really quickly. Now, what I see a lot of um, founders doing these days, and again, this has sort of changed in the last 2 years with the advent of AI development, because now you're sort of getting the reverse, which,
You can move a little bit quicker on feedback loops. Yeah.
yeah, you can move a lot quicker, but for a long time this wasn't the case, and you'd see founders, blow 90% of their initial, working capital,
If not 100,
if not 100, if 110, and they would
200.
and the founder pride would mean that they weren't willing to get it out to users.
Still exists though. Yeah.
And then when they finally did get it out to users, they had no money left for sales and marketing. And then they get caught in this doom loop of getting a couple of sales leads, or bit of interest, and that interest going, oh, we'll buy you if you just add this feature.
Yeah, and it never ends.
Exactly right. And so we had three schools who, on the basis of a really crappy PowerPoint slide deck about what it might look like in a few months, agreed to pilot it. They all kicked off, but really only one trialed it properly. And it was, again, yeah,
That's the other challenge, getting the pilots to actually take it on properly.
exactly.
not easy. It is always a problem. Yeah.
There are so many hidden traps and lessons that we've learned over the years in respect of things that you think are easy are going to be hard, and vice versa. And one of those things is that getting people to say yes is hard enough, but getting people to allocate the time to onboard, to change, to be patient with your immature product, to provide feedback, to give a testimonial referral, that's actually harder. Um,
I would agree with that. Yeah, seen that along the journey. It's a lot harder, and you need to hang on to those customers like gold, those early ones that are willing to provide feedback. They're your engine room of opportunity and ideating, and yeah, then not everyone's in that position, nor has capacity, nor has the patience, because they need patience to learn something new, even though they're walking into unknown a little bit.
Absolutely, and look, I'm living and breathing that again right now. I think I'm absolutely crazy for doing it, but I always say to startup founders now, you need to make your first, whatever, depending on your product, it's a different number, but let's just say for us to make your first 50 customers like family. Yeah, and that's exactly to your point about just how nurturing you need to be, how much you need to hold their hands. I'd drive bottles of red wine around to schools in the northern beaches when the system wouldn't play nice, and apologise, see them in person, and the big misstep that a lot of digital product builders make is is of course what we all want, which is we build a SaaS product and then we just sit back and watch the money tick over. We watch the stripe just churn over. But what actually happens is you need to get super manual and superhuman in those early days and build great relationships in order for people to give you a go, to be forgiving of bugs, to give you a testimonial before you really deserve one, to give you a referral before you really deserve one, to sort of artificially kickstart that flywheel. And I'll give you a good example. We've just launched in Ireland, right? And funnily enough, the reason we launched in Ireland is because we found this young punk over there who'd actually used an AI dev to plagiarize our platform.
Oh, brilliant!
And his biggest mistake was calling himself ClassCover, and so God knows why he did that, but we went quiet and got an EU trademark and told him to go away. But the enterprising young gentleman had actually validated the Irish market for us, which was pretty cool. Yeah, but I'm back on the hustle now, right? And for every single new Instagram follower, for every oh mate, it is a hustle. Every LinkedIn, every new Instagram follower, even we're going into these big WhatsApp groups full of substitute teachers, which is how they manage teaching substitutes over there at the moment. I give them my personal email address. I say, if you got questions, send me an email. I don't want to appear to be this mega company that's just trying to land into a new territory and just go, okay, snap our fingers and we'll dominate. I want to say, no, there's a human face to this. If you got a question, ask me, and I'll keep doing that until I absolutely have no capacity to do that, because I think it ingratiates yourself in the early stages as really as a company that cares about its early users, and gets and tries to nurture that, I guess that sort of that the early adoption, the forgiveness, the willingness to provide feedback. So yeah, big believer in that.
In the end, yeah, like you said, the money machine. Everyone wants a money machine, but that's not reality. Yeah, you're hands on, and I think you go back to the early days of that first product. I'm sure your current product has no real recollection of that at all anymore. The reality is it's changed. Why? Because you've got really good relationships, you've got feedback over the journey. You need that. If you're not in touch with your user base, you can't get that. You're not going to get, even though you get 10, 20, 30 clients on it, then you see them drop off and you're going to ask why. And then you don't really have the answer because you haven't built that relationship to allow them to open up too. Because on the surface, you, you'll get noisy customers always, but sometimes the noisy customers won't give you the best feedback at all. It's the quiet ones in the corner that don't want to open up or too scared to say anything. But if you build a relationship with them, they'll happily tell you and they feel comfortable doing that. And that's where some gold will come from generally. I find the noisy customers, sometimes it just that's how they are in personality wise. So noisy, just yeah, happy to complain, but not giving you real insights as to where to go. That's what I've found when you're working with early stage people. So yeah, would 100% agree that the closer it's a relationship game. It's like anything. With software with some support and with some relationship building and with a service, really it cuts through in terms of that end. If you're building a consumer product, still reckon you need to do it. Yeah, I don't think it's easy to just launch a product and have a million users the next day. I think it's just a pipe dream for pretty much everyone. But
Absolutely.
startup founders sometimes get carried away.
Totally agree.
Always get carried away. That's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've seen many times where they come to me and say, "I've got a revenue forecast." I go, "Yeah, that's great. That's nice." And you see millions in the first 12 months. Yeah, good luck with that. It's just not reality, and I'm sure you've seen that in what you're doing if you're advising startups along the journey. Yeah,
Nothing's ever as good or as bad as it seems is a pretty good is a pretty good mindset to take, and that could be anything from a big enterprise opportunity to a bug in the system. You want to try and take a few deep breaths and knock off 20 or 30% of off the good and the bad.
exactly. Would agree with that. There, a couple of things you talk about enterprise. You talk about how you shifted your product a little bit. So you're targeting schools originally, right? But now I can see you got government badges all over your website. What does enterprise look like? How did it evolve to maybe sign a government, which means it rolls out to public schools in totality? That's a big shift. That's a big game. It's a big difference in terms of selling one to selling one to many effectively. When along the journey did that begin? What started that process? And let's talk about how long it actually really took to get that done. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great question. I'll start from the most outrageous sales cycle story that I've got in the business, and that is to say that when my now 13-year-old son was due to be born, on his due date, I flew to Tasmania to present to the Tasmanian Principals Association. There was a good amount of enthusiasm about the product, and subsequently we've gone on to sign up a good number of the Tasmanian schools individually, but that enterprise procurement is actually yet to be finalised. And even as of 2026, they are still saying that there will be a procurement process at some stage, hopefully this year. But that's 13 years. So that gives you a little bit of an indication as to I get or
That's the longest I've heard. Good on
well,
you for keep going. Very persistent, which is good. Yeah.
and it informs I guess some advice I've given start.
It's a reality check. It's
It is, and it informs advice that I've given startups in the years since. In that you can't bet your house on enterprise. It's funny when I look at my revenue forecast for the coming year, I pretty much I have a revenue in my control and revenue out of my control category. And that is to say that, so say we signed the New South Wales Department of Education in 2018, and we're signed with them until 2029. We're on the second contract with them. Now, the way they came about, we acquired 770 of New South Wales's public schools individually, and then that bottom up pressure sort of forced the government to do something about it, and eventually they procured us for the whole 2,200. Now, in respect to the Queensland Department of Education, public schools weren't allowed to use our software. And so when we signed them last July, we went from 0 to 1,300, straight away. So there's different pathways, right? But everything from state elections to points of contact that leave or get promoted, to budget prioritization. There is so enterprise is so little in your control as a founder or as an owner, that you have to make sure that you are prolonging your runway by generating revenue that is in your control. and that's typically that B2B or that B2C, and making sure that there's a yeah, that's right. And as much as I mean, look, three government contracts at ClassCover make up 60 even more percent of our revenue. But the reality is that I had to treat that like bonus revenue
Mm.
because I had no control over when the process would start, how long the process would take, and when they'd write their first check. And so if you're
It's good insight for people to think about when they're looking at enterprise, because government's probably even worse than enterprise. It's another layer. But I feel like, yeah, government changes, stops. Yeah, this is years cycles, right? That, yeah, you can understand why it's completely out of control.
and it really it really does, you know, it hits home another, you know, you got to look for your unfair advantages, right? And you know, you've got no one's got all upside when it comes to market conditions. And in education and in government, your sales cycle is extremely long, can be extremely expensive. But the reality is, let's say for Queensland, we're replacing a platform of which the end of life on that platform when it went into maintenance mode was 2009,
Wow.
and we're replacing that in 2026. So
Wow.
so
Yeah, okay.
the
Mm.
sales cycle is long, but the loyalty and the change resistance is significant. And so, as long as you've got a good product going in and you've got the runway resilience, then if you can land these enterprise deals, then they're great.
They're there for 10 plus years, yes. Mm.
But you need some serious, what I call runway resilience, if you're going to be banking any of your success on landing government or landing enterprise.
Mm. Oh, it's a really good point for everyone to just think about because yeah, you have these conversations with founders and you have to go low end and then target enterprise as well if you're going to go into if it's an enterprise product. I don't see any other way because you're never going to get the validation either. Even if you've got enough runway, you've raised $5 million. Let's paint a picture, and just go to enterprise. By the time you get pilots in enterprise, your validation cycle's that slow that you can't really solve the problems the way they should be solved. So you still need those lower level, which is a B2B model or a small business model or medium enterprise, whatever it is for your product. There's no you need that validation cycle. So when you go to enterprise, you got less challenges there, but there's going to be different validation challenges because you've got more stakeholders, different process problems. So, and I'm sure the product's very different in enterprise than it is just for one school because you've got different layers. They want different reports. They want different data flows. So there's different implementations. They maybe have integrations. I'm not sure, but there's other considerations at our enterprise to actually deliver the outcome.
Yep, we have all of that. Everything you've said it. Yep, absolutely.
And you don't know it until you unpack it with them either.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's the fun of the game. So in startup advisory, if I'm someone out there that's looking to jump into anything new, what's three things you get them to think about before they did jump into something new, and give this a go? What would you say? Have a think through X, Y, Z before you jump in.
Yeah, so 15 years after starting the business, I get out of bed every morning and go, is the problem big enough? Is the solution big enough? Is the market big enough? And you're not necessarily going to get a yes on all three of those things, but I get out of bed every morning and go, look, I'm solving a massive problem and a massive solution in a medium-sized market. So I'll probably get marked down a little bit on market size, but thankfully we've gotten into a market position where we're dominant. Near on, the only, I mean, certainly the only player with school numbers in the thousands. So firstly, it's that. Is your problem big enough? Is your solution big enough? Is your market big enough? And then from there, it's really saying, okay, well, if that's a yes, yes, pretty good, or a yes, 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 or whatever it might be, then it's when you go out to execute, it's always being laser focused on trying to do the highest impact, lowest effort, lowest cost activities in the business at all times, because we can get so distracted. And that distraction can often be brought about by always doing the things you like doing and are good at versus the things you don't like doing and are not necessarily good at. And when you see founders gravitate towards the things they like doing and they're good at, and they neglect high impact activities just because they don't like doing it, then that's where they get themselves into trouble. The the third thing I'd say, and there'd be plenty of others if I really had to think about it, for a long time. But the third thing I would say is that I see myself as the chief snowplow of my business. Right, I don't care about not being the smartest guy in the room. All I see myself as getting all the crap out of the way for my very capable team to do their best job. I try to have no ego, and just to say to my team that if you show me a team that is comfortable with saying I'm wrong, I made a mistake, I need help, I'm late, I'm over budget. If you are very comfortable saying that and surfacing that quickly, then I'll show you a team on rocket boosters. Um, yeah,
Yeah, that's some really good insight there. I think the distractions and doing what you're good at and like doing, that's a interesting one for everyone to reflect on, not just the founder or a business owner. Because yeah, we do gravitate to what we enjoy doing, and that's just much easier. And you maybe, but that's not really going to deliver the real outcome. And it's more around what's the outcome focused and what's going to actually move you towards it, and how do you set that up early in business? Because I think you can get a little bit lost in business. It's quite easy to wear many hats and just do and tick off tasks, and but the reality is we've got to slow down, strategize a little bit more, and then reflect. Okay, what are the things that are going to move the needle on this? And that's where the energy must go. And if you can't put energy there, then you're in trouble. Because it's easy to burn time in business. I've learnt
absolutely.
over the journey. It can go quickly. That's then just burning capital. It's burning opportunity, and it can leave you behind pretty quickly if you don't spend time in the right areas. Uh, and I think it's more from what I've learned over the journey of just being in business myself since 2008, so it's been a little while, as well in terms of space. We we can look at, like I said, trying to just do what we're good at, like you said. But if we're not reflecting and not learning from mistakes, problems, challenges, or reinventing ourselves over time, then there's also a problem. Because I imagine the person who started this business, Ben, is not the person I see today. Uh, you would have learned a lot over the journey and had to reflect on what do I do now, and your role changes over time too. So, as a business grows, your role shifts, it evolves, it maybe comes out of product and maybe goes to big relationships. Or what do you see is different? It's probably a good question for you. Since the early days to now, how's the thinking and the business evolved and you? Because I think it's a big growth opportunity in business, because we always hit challenges and problems. Because yeah, what's the difference between Ben 15 years ago to today?
Yeah, look, I mean, everything you've said there is, especially some of the missteps. I guess we've made them all.
Oh, everyone's made mistakes. There's no clear path. Yeah.
I don't. If there's a mistake that can be made, I've made it. And again, I talk about good luck and good.
I could second that over here. Don't worry. It's you make lots of them.
I talk about good luck and good management, and forks in the road and all that sort of stuff. Um, yeah, look, I've always been, as an individual, I've always been a pretty big questioner of stereotypes and just doing stuff because everyone else has done them. Now, I think though, in respect of growing a business, I think I was susceptible to that, and over the years, that has gone away. And part of that is just I think it's just a general maturation, you know, exercise. Also, yeah, you start to see a few things go right, and the self belief kicks in. I definitely did not. I mean, I talk to you now. Obviously, I know I've got a pretty confident tone in my voice. I don't doubt that. I know that, and again, it's only based on experience that I sort of share these insights with you. But that for a long time was not the case. There was not that self confidence. There wasn't that sort of certainty, which then feeds the vulnerability, feeds the comfort levels with saying I don't know, I need help. Um, Especially
That's a good one. Asking for help's difficult. It can be difficult
big
in
time.
early business. Like, who ask? You feel embarrassed. I should know this, but the reality is, you only know what you know. And I think people forget that. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I think that's the big difference. It's being it's not going, oh my God, I should know this, and I'm not going to ask anyone because I'm scared, or having this big imposter syndrome. I still get imposter syndrome all the time, but at the same time, it was way more acute. Where again, you knew you'd identified a big problem, you think you got a big solution, but on that execution, it's like, well, I've never done this before, or I've never done that before, I've never done that before. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of people around who, whether it be in the startup ecosystem or whatever, they're very ready to tell you you're useless, or very ready to sort of question your abilities, question your capabilities, um, and that feeds a self-talk that maybe you aren't good enough, maybe you're not up to this,
Why do you think that is in the startup ecosystem?
or it's all ego and insecurity.
Yeah, that's just pushing it back onto someone else. Yeah.
And it's especially prevalent in male dominated industries. Like there is so much insecurity, that is prevalent, and it's no different really to schoolyard bullying, right? And the thing is that you've got it's funny, in respect of, let's say, how males and females are. There's some pretty well worn research that says, you say to a bloke, hey, there's this job opportunity, um, and the bloke looks at the job opportunity, he can't do half the stuff. The bloke's going to go, yeah, I'll give it a go. And then you say that to a female, and a female to be, oh no, I've got to go away and do some training. I've got to go away, go educate myself. Then I'll come back and try it once I'm educated. Now, don't get me wrong, there's good and bad to that. And the have a go sort of, fake it till you make it, has fueled a lot of startups, including our own. You know, However, at the same time, if you've got an ecosystem, of which I think, frankly, startup can be a bit like this, where there's a bit of a chest beating, kind of, environment, where people, will have a prevalent, have a willingness to put you down and make themselves feel better. Um, I've moved right past that. Look, I just have no time for that sort of shit.
Oh, it doesn't make any sense. I think it's in the end, you want to work with around people that bring you up, not put you down. Or I think the chest beating is definitely around. I haven't really gone in the startup community too much. We support it from the outskirts by what the type of work that we do, but I'm not living in it. But if you, yeah, you see it. You see it with the chest beating side when you're talking about stuff you want to push out. We've been spinning up an internal product we're looking to commercialize, and which is a different world. And you have some conversations with people around what you're doing, and I can do this, I can help you do this, and they pay me X retainer. This okay, that's an interesting way to operate. What results are we getting for this? So you see a little bit of that going on too. So just be careful in terms of who you engage, and I've seen it many times. You're engaging these cowboys advisors out there that get paid a lot and don't deliver anything. That's what I've seen around the skirts and the people we've worked with and different parties. So yeah, that's a challenge as well for startup founders. And I think that's what you just said there. They put people down and then they build themselves up to, no, I can solve all this for you. And then people feel like they have to buy something. But sometimes it's just start the journey, and you'll learn a lot as you go. But yeah, reach out, ask questions. If they can't answer questions, they're probably not the right person for you anyway. If they hold all their cards close, because yeah, the reality is they're probably holding not much close. That's what I've seen anyway, my experience around the space. But in terms of for you, my always like a last question I like to leave you with is you mentioned you're solving a big problem that gets you up in the morning. What's the next 10 years look like, though? What's it look like for you? Are you continuing the path? What does it look like? Is it growing internationally? Or is that just because it happened, a bit serendipitous? what's the thinking and the strategy moving forward for a business like yours that you're in a position where you're quite stable, obviously, from what I'm hearing, you're comfortable in terms of where you're at, but we can't get too comfortable either in any business. If we're not growing a business, we're going backwards. That's the philosophy I've always brought around. And growing might be in quality that's coming out, in efficiency, in customer numbers, in whatever it looks like, growth in many areas, right? So, what's the next 10 years look for you, and what's the key areas you want to be focusing on?
Yeah, look, I love working the business, and we've got a great team, which I'm really proud of. So certainly very content and happy to keep trying to grow this. And where we're heading at ClassCover is effectively becoming like the LinkedIn for education. The reason we're doing that, again, go to big problem, big solution, big market. Teachers hate LinkedIn, frankly. They don't find the content relevant. They don't like the corporate feel. They don't like the idea of running into parents on there. And at ClassCover, we haven't, except in the case, look, an Ireland, haven't extended to other sectors, extended to other countries. What we've done is built out other services to provide our educator database with. So we've got a professional development product, we've got a recruitment jobs board, sort of Seek for Education. We've got a couple other products in the pipeline, and we sort of looked around a couple of years ago and said, look, this is a bit like a LinkedIn. We need to bind together all these offerings. A classic sort of come for the product, stay for the network play. But our sort of vision is to be the app that we want every educator in Australia to have on their home screen. And that is where they'll go to get employment, they'll go to upskill, they'll go to get partner discounts, they could be a school looking for other providers that sell into education. And again, and all bound together with a sort of news feed, community sort of, again, sort of whatever you want to call it, bonder. I guess it's a bad word, but yeah, that's where we want to be. Basically, LinkedIn for education.
And it's always evolving, yeah. That's another thing. You didn't start there, did you? So I think, yeah, stay if you're on this journey, it's going to continue to evolve, and it will always uplift. And I think it's interesting how you've just gone deep in an industry, um, which is always going to spread yourself too thin. Some people do this. They go after many industries, they don't go deep enough, and it's hard to connect. It takes time to crack an industry. And once you own an industry and you're delivering good outcomes and the customers are comfortable with you, it's a lot easier to sell to your current customers than it is to create a new ones, as we learn in business. So it's smart to just go deep in that space. And some things you're going to get right, some things you're going to get wrong, and you'll learn from that. But better than going after an industry and blowing it because you haven't really got or many at once and you never get anything. Yeah, so really good insight there. But yeah, Ben, pleasure. I could probably talk all day, but we'll cut it. Maybe we'll get you on another episode because there's probably heaps I can discuss. Given your experience, it's a good chat. Classcover.com.au if anyone wants to check it out. Ben, thanks for joining us. It's been a real pleasure coming on DevReady podcast.
That's an absolute pleasure, Andrew. Thanks very much.
Thanks, mate.